Have you ever looked into the eyes of something that shouldn't exist and felt sorry for it? I have. It was on a morning when the cold seemed to have swallowed the sound of the world. It was a long time ago, winter of 1998, but I still remember the smell of iron in the air and the silence that followed. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's heavy. My name is Jacob. I was a park ranger in northern New Mexico, and that week a blizzard had buried everything. Snapped trees, cabins covered to the roof, trails erased as if no one had stepped there in centuries. My partner, Harris, and I went out to patrol the most remote sector of the Chusca Mountains, the kind of place where even the radio fails. The idea was simple: check trails, see if anyone was stranded. But that night, in the middle of the frozen snow and the scattered claw marks, we found something that shouldn't have been alive. Injured, breathing hard, too big to be a man, too smart to be an animal. And against all instinct, we decided to help. To this day, I wonder if that was the moment it all started to unravel. Harris and I had already been on patrol for 4 days when it happened. The kind of work that leaves you exhausted before dawn even breaks. The blizzard from the week before had downed power lines, blocked access roads, and frozen even the smaller rivers. Our job was to make sure no one was trapped in the hunting cabins or trail shelters. The cold was unnatural. 13 degrees during the day, maybe 40 degrees at night, with the wind cutting like a blade. Even the pine trees cracked with the ice inside their trunks, and every breath came out in clouds that froze before they hit the ground. In that kind of temperature, the silence is absolute. No birds, no wind, just the sound of your own blood rushing in your ears. Harris was the kind of guy the cold didn't scare. 15 years in the woods had made him tough, almost part of the landscape. He read the terrain like a book, every footprint, every broken branch, every distant sound. I, on the other hand, still felt like a rookie trying to look in control. I learned fast that fear isn't the enemy. It's instinct trying to warn you. Our route followed an old logging trail, now reclaimed by snow and time. With every step, it felt like crossing into a forgotten world, a place nothing human was supposed to be. The routine was methodical: stop at the cabins, note the damage, check emergency supplies, and leave extra if needed. The nights were long, the only light coming from our flashlights and the camp stove. Sometimes the wind would shift, and the sound seemed to carry voices, but you learn to ignore that. The forest loves to mess with the heads of the sleep-deprived. That morning, everything seemed the same. White sky, erased horizon, the two of us walking in silence. It was Harris who broke the rhythm, pointing to a set of tracks crossing the path. "Bear," he said at first, but the way he kept staring at those marks made me realize even he didn't believe what he was saying. The tracks were fresh, fresher than any trail should be in that temperature. At first, they looked like bear tracks, but the more we followed them, the more wrong it all felt. The spacing was too long. The weight of each step pressed the snow all the way down to the hard ice, and the shape was almost human. Harris knelt, ran his glove over the print, and went quiet. "No bear walks like this," he muttered, mostly to himself. We followed the tracks for a good half-mile, entering a part of the forest that felt different. The trees were ancient, thick-trunked, the sunlight barely getting through, and the silence in there was different, heavy, as if sound wasn't allowed inside. I started to feel a chill that didn't come from the air, the kind that gathers at the base of your neck. Harris was up ahead, alert, measuring the distance, taking photos. The trail changed direction as if the creature knew the exact path. No stumbles, no hesitation. That's when we heard it, a sound that made the air vibrate in my chest. It wasn't a roar, not a scream, something in between. Harris stopped cold, his gaze locked onto the direction of the sound, and his face hardened. I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. "Whatever it is, it's hurt," he said, his voice low. "But it's close." We moved carefully, weaving between the trunks. Every 20 steps, the sound came again, weaker but still carrying that note of mixed pain and rage. Soon, we saw the blood, dark drops on the white snow, dragging into a clearing. And in the center, the remains of a bear, a huge one, neck snapped, signs of a fight everywhere. But it wasn't the bear that made me lose my breath. It was what was sitting a few yards away from it, too big to be a man, but with eyes that didn't belong to an animal. And that's when Harris whispered, in the lowest voice I'd ever heard from him, "My God, Jacob, what the hell is that?" The creature was leaning against a pine tree, breathing hard. Its chest rose and fell in short intervals, the vapor from its hot breath mixing with the cold. Its entire body was covered in dark fur, matted with blood, and its hands, they were hands, long, too human, with long fingers and nails that looked like claws. Even wounded, it was enormous. Sitting, it was still over 7 feet tall. Its left shoulder was open with 3 deep cuts, its leg twisted at an impossible angle. And still there was something in its gaze that made me freeze. It wasn't savagery, it was awareness. Harris raised his hand, signaling for silence. We stood there, about 20 yards away, trying to decide whether to run or shoot. The creature watched us the same way we were watching it, measuring, assessing. For a second, I thought it would attack, but instead, it let out a low sound, almost a groan. It was a plea for help, as absurd as that sounds. Harris looked at me. He was the kind of man who always had a ready answer. But that day, he hesitated. He lowered his rifle, shrugged off his pack, and started opening the first aid kit. "Are you crazy?" I whispered. "Look at it, Jacob. That thing is dying." His impulse wasn't courage, it was instinct. Years of dealing with wounded animals had taught him to recognize when something had given up the fight. And this being, whatever it was, didn't want to fight anymore. We approached slowly, every step measured. The crunch of the snow seemed to echo for miles. The creature didn't move, just followed us with its eyes. When Harris knelt a few feet away, it let out another sound, deep, almost a warning, and he paused. He took out the bottle of antiseptic, showed it to the creature, pointed to the wound, and then to himself. The thing watched him intently, then tilted its head, as if it understood. In that moment, something inside me screamed to run, and maybe I should have listened. Harris started working on the wound like it was any other animal. Slow movements, never. Looking it directly in the eyes, showing each item before he used it. Gauze, tape, the sharp smell of the antiseptic. The creature flinched at the first touch, its whole body tensing, but it didn't react. It just made that dull sound, a growl trapped in its throat, somewhere between pain and understanding. I watched, paralyzed. The thing could crush him with one move. Even weakened, it was pure, compressed strength, but it held back. When Harris pressed the cloth to the wound, the creature grabbed his wrist with one of its hands, enormous, hot, pulsing with power, and stared into his eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly, it let go. "It's letting me," he whispered. "It understands what I'm doing." I wanted to believe that we were helping something rational, not playing with something that shouldn't be touched. Gradually, the clearing felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the cold was pooling around us. Every breath felt like a warning, "Don't stay here." After a few minutes, the bandage was done. Harris even showed it the bottle of antibiotics, pointed to his mouth, and mimed swallowing. The creature watched him, took the bottle between its fingers, and, to our astonishment, did the same. Swallowed dry. That simple gesture changed everything. This wasn't just an animal trying to survive. It was something that understood what we were saying without needing words. I remember looking at Harris and seeing he was overcome with a kind of fascination that gave me the chills. "Jacob, we can't just leave this thing here." And that's how the stupidest idea of my life began. helping something that shouldn't even exist get to its feet. If you've ever wondered how far human empathy goes, I can tell you, it goes way too far when fear isn't stronger than guilt. Oh, and if you're with me this far, hit that like button to support this series. I promise, what comes next is the point where it all falls apart. It took us a while to figure out what to do. The thing, whatever it was, could barely move. Harris looked around the clearing, sizing up trunks and branches, and suddenly started to improvise a pair of crutches from two Y-shaped limbs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "You're going to teach it to walk?" I asked. He just answered, "If we leave it here, it dies, and if it dies, others will come." The creature watched his every move intently. When Harris demonstrated the motion of bracing the branch under his arm and taking a step, it tilted its head and seemed to understand. The problem was getting it off the ground. Helping to lift that much weight was like trying to move a tree. On the third try, it finally heaved itself up, muscles trembling, a hoarse sound coming from its throat. It stood, and for an instant I saw something like gratitude in its eyes. "Where to now?" I asked. Harris didn't know how to answer. It was the creature that decided. It lifted one arm and pointed into the dense woods, as if to say, "There." We followed. Every step was torture for it. The blood started to drip onto the snow again. With every groan, the cold seemed to get denser. The wind died completely, and only the sound of the dragging crutches and its breathing broke the silence. After half an hour, we reached the base of a slope. There, among fallen logs, was a fissure covered with branches, almost invisible. The creature made a low sound and pointed. It was its shelter. We went in together, crouching. Inside it was a natural cave, warm and damp, lit by a pale glow coming from some opening above. The floor was covered in leaves, and on the walls, symbols, circles, lines, hanging bones. It wasn't a nest, it was a home. It dragged itself to a corner and collapsed onto a sort of bed made of moss and pelt. It breathed deeply, eyes fixed on us, alert but calm. Harris put his pack on the ground, lowered his head, a gesture of respect I'd never seen from him. It was there, in that quiet darkness, that I understood. The forest wasn't ours. We were the ones who had been invited to leave it alive. We stayed there for a few minutes that felt like hours. Harris looked at everything, fascinated. The walls were covered with arrangements of stones, branches, and pelts, like symbols, but also like mementos. Some objects were so old they seemed petrified in time. The air smelled of wet earth, blood, and old smoke. The creature watched us in silence, almost motionless. Its chest rose slowly, and its eyes tracked our every move without hostility, just presence. "It's lived here a long time," Harris muttered. I nodded, but my head was already somewhere else. This wasn't an animal, it was someone, and the weight of that thought cut through me like ice. We left food, gauze, a bottle of water. The creature didn't move until we started to back away. Then something unexpected. It raised one of its hands and touched its own chest, then pointed at us. A slow, heavy gesture, almost like, "Thanks." We left without saying a word. Silence outside felt different, more alive, as if the forest was listening to us. On the way back, the sky started to close in again. The cold was tightening its grip, but now there was something else. The feeling of being followed. Harris stopped twice to look back. No sound, no shadow, just snow and trees. Still the feeling persisted. In the following days, we returned to the spot a few times. We'd leave food at a safe distance, and it would always disappear. Sometimes we'd find new tracks on the ground, no longer pained, but firm, regular. And one detail that chilled my blood. There was always a small arrangement of branches left in the same spot, like a reply. The last time we went, at the end of winter, the shelter was empty. No trail, no tracks, just the silence, deep and clean, as if nothing had happened. But when we got back to the station, things started to change. Sounds outside the cabin at night. enormous tracks near the truck, and one time, I swear on my life, a figure standing at the tree line, motionless, as if waiting. I think it wanted us to know. It didn't forget. Years have passed since that winter. Harris retired shortly after, moved south, said he never wanted to see snow again. I stayed. I still run patrols, but I never went back to that side of the mountains. Not because I'm afraid of what I might find, but because I don't want to find out if it's still there. Every now and then, on the coldest nights, I hear a distant sound on the wind, a deep, dragging echo that doesn't belong to any animal I know. In those moments, I remember its eyes, the way they looked at us, not with anger, but with something that looked like recognition. Helping that being was a mistake, maybe the biggest of my life. But if I had to relive that moment, I think I'd do the same. There's a very fine line between compassion and condemnation, and we crossed it without even noticing. Sometimes I think what we found out there wasn't a monster. Maybe it was just a mirror, showing us the strangest parts of our own humanity. If this story made you think or chilled you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell, because the next story will make you question what really lives in the shadows of the forest.